Yeah, great. What did you make of the GMAT syllabus with regards to both quant and verbal?
Mm.
And what was your strategy in general when you started with your GMAT prep?
Right. So yeah, I started my prep in 2019. So it was
Mhm.
basically around October or November that I started, and I took my first exam in January 2020.
All right.
Yes. So basically, I enrolled in IMS. I took classes for GMAT. One thing that I really realized about GMAT is that the quant is still doable, but though, I like to think of myself as someone who really has like a good English background, or, I love like studying English literature and books. But
Yeah.
despite that, what I felt is that the GMAT verbal is a notch higher than what regular English we use or we are accustomed to,
Right.
especially because it is crafted by native speakers. So some of the rules, some of the standards that they use, we are not even aware of that. So we have been taught from school, we have been taught in a way, and since we are the non-native speakers, and also we have been taught the Queen's English, like the British English, there are a lot of
Mhm.
things that change when it comes to GMAT, and the verbal does get a bit tougher, I would say, compared to other competitive exams, because I know that the Indians are really familiar with like CAT or ZAT, but I would say the GMAT verbal, what I felt was really tough. There was no definite strategy or structure in the way which I learned. And that's the reason that in my first attempt, I scored 720 in January. And I decided to retake the exam, but then again, I didn't have any strategy because I didn't really know that, I needed to have a specific learning strategy to tackle the GMAT. And 720 was not a very bad score, but for the
Right.
schools that I was targeting, like Darden and Fuqua, these are really competitive schools,
Yeah.
and we need to really stand out from the pool of the applicants who apply. And I applied. I took the GMAT for a second time in February, but it was like a shocker for me because it was only a 10-point increase. It was 730.
Mhm.
So then people told me that it's a fairly good score, and I was also kind of like, okay, so I have taken the GMAT twice, and then people told me, okay, so you have a 730. Why don't you just give a shot with this score? Let me tell you, cutting long story short, I applied to again 5 or 6 schools, but with this score, with 730, and with the profile that I have, but I got waitlisted at every school. Uh,
I see.
yes, so I got
Yeah.
waitlisted at Darden, and this was consecutive waitlist. So you can imagine the kind of, I would say, negativity that it really engenders in
Mm.
your mind. So I
Yeah.
got waitlisted at Darden, I got waitlisted at Fuqua, and then at Ross. These are like consecutive. And then I realized that something is going wrong in the application. And then I took the GMAT again. So, and this time, like you said, I really had to strategize. So, like finding out what my strengths were, what my weaknesses were, we can elaborate on that later, of course. And based on that strategy, and a definite strategy is what helped me secure 760. And then, so then obviously, like happiness followed. I got admits from ISB, though ISB had happened before 760, but ISB
Yeah.
wasn't really my goal.
Yeah.
So 760, I got 760. I updated the score to Tuck. Tuck results weren't out yet. So I got the results of Tuck within a week, and I got a score, select and admit, as well as a scholarship of 50,000 USD.
Wow. Wonderful. So scholarship of 50K USD.
Yes.
And, a lot of students, who are attending the webinar here would be wondering, okay, 720 on the first attempt, 730 on the second attempt, which actually, are decent scores, pretty decent scores, which would have seen you through ISP.
Right.
Yeah. And, but that is the kind of clarity that Dipinti had with regards to what she wanted and the kind of score that would really make her stand out in the pool of applicants. But just to make that 30-point jump,
Hmm.
right, or I'd say rather a 40-point jump from your first attempt score, required you to delve deeper into what was amiss. You were there and thereabouts. It's a good score, but to really have an exceptional score required you to delve deeper. And with regards to the strategy you're talking about, working on the minuter parts of it.
Hmm.
So, what was it that you discovered was lacking in a 720 attempt of yours that you really covered up and ensured it's all, that you have it taken care of when you scored that 760?
Right, right, absolutely. So I think, like, if I talk about myself and specifically about my strengths and weaknesses, quant
Mhm.
was one section that I was really not very good at. Okay, So though I come from like an engineering background and I am a software developer myself, so what happened was that my quant scores were like consistently, they were either dipping and going up. So I was
Mhm.
stuck in that 48, 49 zone. And I decided to take up the GMAT again and I scored a 760. At that moment, I really had to like introspect and retrospect about what had gone wrong on those two attempts. And the one thing that really struck my mind this time was that there is something that is going wrong because my quant, why are the scores not remaining consistent? And the one thing that was really lacking were my fundamentals. So my quantitative, I wasn't really clear with the fundamental approach, the structured or the, I would say, the step-by-step method that we should use to solve questions. So like a bunch of other people, I simply used shortcuts to arrive at my answers. Number one point, never ever use shortcuts in GMAT. So it may work in some questions, but I would say that in other questions, we would like definitely falter at. So it is always better to learn the structured approach of solving every question. And this is what will help us get to that Q50 or Q51. So that was what was lacking in quant. And if I talk about verbal, now it is very important to realize that within verbal also there are certain subsections, right? So there's SC, there is CR, and there's RC. And for me, I was pretty good at SC. So I could just solve SC questions in like 30 seconds to 1 minute. But then when I came to CR, I was severely lacking in it. So maybe sometimes I just couldn't frame the answer. So I read the question, I pointed out an answer, and then I went to the other options and I got confused. Now, to pinpoint that, now you should be very aware of your strengths and weaknesses. Now within CR, there are a lot of categories of questions like assumption, there is strengthener, there is weakener, there's boldface. You should also be aware that which particular subsection within CR is what you are lacking at. For example, for me, I was severely lacking in strengthening and assumption questions. Now, you should be in your mind, you should be aware of your strengths and weaknesses at the first place. If you're not aware of that, then you won't know what are the target areas that you should focus on while you are delving deeper into the GMAT. So, being very cognizant of the subsectional accuracy is what will get you to that perfect score.
You haven't talked about RC as
Right.
of yet. Now, I want to talk about it because it's something that is an issue with a lot of students.
Hmm.
How do you go about reading a
Hmm.
passage? Do you read it entirely in one
Hmm.
go? Then do you go to the questions and come back later to the passage? Do you skim through the passage?
Hmm.
Do you not read the passage at all? Read the questions first, and then
Right.
we have multiple strategies. What was it
Hmm.
that worked for you when it came
Right.
to reading
Right.
comprehension?
Hmm. So yeah, first thing that I would advise people, so people who are just starting off with the GMAT journey, one thing that we don't do is we don't read. Okay, so be it we never read our textbooks, we never really liked them. In our engineering days, it was just to, memorize a bunch of stuff and just take the exam. We don't like to read. And for people who are like avid readers or, who are like book fans, I would say that RC would be pretty easy for you. So make yourself into a person who really likes reading books. So you can start with simple fiction or, with thrillers or any genre that really attracts to you. I myself, I really like reading books from the start. So yeah, I would say that yes, RC, coming to RC strategy, obviously it's very different from reading a book. But yes, it definitely the reading quality gets built up from when you start reading other books as well. Now, what happens in RC is what I used to do. Obviously, it is a strategy that I obtain, and it is not the most, I would say, fail safe method, but you can
Mhm.
definitely use this strategy. So
Mhm.
don't really go for that approach where you read the question and come to the passage. I used to do that
Right.
in CAT. It works in CAT, I would say, but in GMAT, the time is very less, okay? And GMAT is an entirely different type of exam. You really won't be able to make the head and tail out of the question because the question will be an inference or a question that whose answer is so intricately hidden that you won't get it when you just read the question and come to the passage. Okay. So
Right.
what I
Right.
would recommend is first read the passage once. And when you're reading the passage, so obviously you need to improve your reading speed. And that will happen once you only, sorry, if and only if you practice a lot of RCs every day. So my target was that let me do anything. Let me do like 50 quant or at least like 20 CR, but I would do two RC passages daily until the day I took GMAT. And that is how you improve your reading speed. It is not just to improve the accuracy, it is also to improve your reading speed. And let me tell you that RC, I would say among the three sections, RC is the best section where you can score the highest. Why? Because the answers are straightforward. Okay. Once you understand the passage, you will literally take, let's say, 30 to 45 seconds in answering the question. So invest some time in reading the passage, let's say 2 to 3 minutes to go through the passage, depending on your reading speed. And then once you have understood it, answering the questions will be like a piece of cake. So you'll just scroll through the questions and you can answer them. And believe me, when I was at a 760, I was at that level where I read the passage. I read it very carefully, like line by line once.
Hmm.
And then I could literally just scroll through questions and answer them like at a time. I didn't even have to go back to the passage once again to search for the second question's answer.
How did you ensure that, and this is something that is true for everyone, only the degree to which it happens varies. How did you ensure that you stayed calm and composed
Hmm.
on the D-Day?
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. And I think that is one of the major reasons why our mock scores and our exam scores are like substantially like poles apart, right? So
Yeah,
I was in a 760 or 760, and then I scored about, let's say, 710, 720 in my original exam, right?
right.
So yeah, so I would say that first of all, nervousness in the back of our mind, we are it's constantly pressurized, right? That we want that score. Okay,
Yeah,
so I want that score, and what's gonna happen if I don't get that score? So when I first took the GMAT test, somewhere at the back of my mind, I was like, okay, if I don't get the score, it means that I would never get into my B school, right? But please remove that from the subconscious of your mind. This is not cat, and you're not gonna lose anything. You still have a chance to take the exam, and then you still have a chance, and then you still have a chance, right?
wow,
So
great, wonderful. Yeah,
right.
please
So
carry on.
please
Yeah,
keep that in the back, like wire it into your subconscious.
so thanks a lot for that, and all the best for your next innings, so as to
Thank
speak.
you. Thank you
Thanks
so
a lot,
much,
Dipinti.
Anshuman. Thank you all for joining, and all the best to for your journey.